Hello there, everyone. My name is Adamew, the coach of your Metropolitan City Muse, or the Torgoth Catalyst, or the Crazy Tora Cat's Eyes, or the more ordained Flamebringers. It just really depends on the day. But today we are going with the Metropolitan City Muse, a team name befitting the two cats glaring at me from the hood of my car. So yeah, we're performing this with a live audience. So yeah. Alright, so it has been a minute since my last video. I've kind of entered a bit of a dead period with my Draft League content, as I'm feeling the best way to go about making Showdown Draft League content is to just upload a massive video at the end of the season, just recapping all of my games and just uploading it as just one video. It's just much easier for me to do that, and since the I have to keep laughing because like there's a cat like literally just stretched out across the hood of my car, and it's funny to me. I'll have to see if I can get a picture of it or of her in post-production, but yeah, it's a major distraction for me. But at any rate, the Showdown content, I'll have one up after my run in UDL comes to an end. It is currently the last week of the regular season in UDL. I am at 3-4 after just having my best 2 weeks of draft in my life, getting a 5-0 and a 6-0 victory in back-to-back weeks. I've put myself back in the playoff race, and I'm hoping I can sneak into the playoffs and cause some mayhem, you know? But this league is not a Showdown league. It is a Wi-Fi league. At long last, we have joined another one. This Wi-Fi league is the Uber Pokemon Association, ran by Dashing Sceptile. So this is, as the name implies, an Uber Draft League, which means we get to use some legendaries like, you know, Reshiram, Zekrom, Terapagos in its stellar form. Miraidon and Koraidon have been banned, as have been a couple other Uber tier Pokemon, but on the whole, it has most Ubers allowed in this. You can see in the logo you got Zekrom, Necrozma Dawnwings, Dialga, and Calyrex Ice. So there was quite a few Ubers to pick from, and this draft works a bit differently from normal points drafts. So in normal points drafts, you'll have around 110 to 120 points to draft a team of 10 to 12 Pokemon. In this draft, you had 150 points to draft 10 to 12 Pokemon. But within this budget, you had a 50-point budget to spend on Uber Pokemon. Uber Pokemon can typically be found between either 20 or 21 points to 27 points. So you could get, at max, 2 Uber Pokemon on your team. You had 50 points to spend on 1 to 2 Uber Pokemon, and yeah. That is how this draft works, and you also had the added gimmick of Terra taxes. So if I want to Terra something like a Moltres, I have to pay a 2-point Terra tax, or whatever Terra tax is described on the dock. Different Pokemon have different Terra taxes depending on how viable their Terra they are as a Terra captain. So you can have stuff like Moltres being a 10-point Pokemon but having a 2-point Terra tax, making it a 12-point Pokemon with Terra, or you can have stuff like Serperior, which is normally a 9-point Pokemon without Terra, but the Terra tax makes it an 18-point Pokemon. So that's a lot of interesting strategy to consider in this draft, and it just really solidified my theme of not knowing what the hell to do. So I didn't know what to do in this draft, and it's really driven home by the fact that my first pick of Mewtwo was literally determined by a will spin. So, my top two Pokemon were Mewtwo or Groudon. I spun a wheel and it unfortunately landed on Mewtwo. I didn't realize how unfortunate that was until I saw the Groudon team. So, yeah, this is very, very workable though, and yeah, I have Mewtwo to go along with the theme of the Mustratton City Mews. So, right off the bat, you can see Mewtwo has a monstrous special attack stat of 154 and a really, really good speed stat. It has solid bulk for being an attacker, and it can also run mixed pretty well, even though it has virtually no reason to run mixed because its special moveset is insane. You can see just a few of the moves it gets. It gets Ice Beam and Thunderbolt, the coveted Bolt Beam coverage, Psy Strike, which acts as a better Psyshock, which is a Psychic type special move that damages foes based on their defense stat rather than their special defense stat. So it can hit stuff like Galarian Slowking and Blissey harder. And breaking through like Blissey and Chansey are some things that like really, really high tier special attacking Ubers struggle to do. It's why Blissey and Chansey are better in Ubers, because they take special hits so well. But Psy Strike is a better Psyshock, and it just negates that advantage for most teams. I have Earth Power, Flamethrower, and hell, even Hurricane to just generally like flesh out the coverage of Mewtwo. It has Recover to keep itself healthy, Trick to cripple things like Quagsire or Dondozo or like Blissey or something if Psy Strike ain't dealing with it for some reason. Or it can just trick a Choice Scarf onto a setup mon to just kind of hinder its ability to, sweep. It also has knockoff for item removal and just a lot of other general good moves, but these are like the notable ones. And you'll see in the bottom left corner, I have a little indicator here that indicates whether a Pokemon's going to be an Uber Pokemon or a Terra Captain. So Mewtwo is going to be one of my two Uber Pokemon, and you can see its little hexagon here is also colored in with a navy blue, indicating an Uber Pokemon. So, yeah. But going into round 2, this is also where I need to mention that I was 8th pick out of 14, which is the worst possible spot in any draft. Being a middle pick is incredibly rough in any draft, and yeah, it's kind of amplified when you don't know what to do. So, coming back pick, I was hoping to get like one of the Zamazintas or Chinpao, and unfortunately for me, the pick that I was going to take, Zamazinta Crowned, was picked the immediate pick before me. So it was pretty much a decision to make between Chinpao and Zamazinta Hero. And ultimately, I went with the comfort pick of Chinpao, solidifying my second Ubers Pokemon. If you've been around my channel for a bit, you know how much I enjoy using Chinpao from my time in the Reasonable Pokemon Association, or RPA. I won a championship with it in the RPA Aracuda division in its 11th season, and I did a lot with it, and I did quite a bit with it in RPA's Milotic division, or their Insurgents division. You didn't see it on camera, but I took the team to quarterfinals and lost round 1 of playoffs to the eventual champion. But Chinpao was a very, very important piece of that team, along with Mega Delta Charizard. And here, I kind of am recreating some of that magic, just having a good special attacker paired up with Chinpao. Chinpao and Mewtwo have just generally nice synergy. Chinpao struggles to beat fighting types, and Mewtwo is a psychic type, which naturally beats fighting types. Mewtwo struggles to handle ghost and dark types, and Chinpao resists both those types, and is able to hit them back with super effective crunches or sacred swords. Chien-Pao also gets Ice Spinner to take care of any like flying types or whatever. But Crunch Ice Spinner hits most everything in the game, and Sacred Sword, Psychic Fangs, they can chip off whatever else needs to be chipped off. It gets Sword Stance to buff its attack way more, Sucker Punch and Ice Shard to get nice priority for things like Dragapult or Basculegion in Rain, and it also gets Recover to recover its health, and yeah. Its attack stat doesn't look that impressive, but with its ability Sword of Ruin, I think it multiplies the opposing Pokemon's defense stat by like 0.67 maybe? It's some number like that, but it lowers the defense of Pokemon on switch-in, so it's Crunches and Ice Spinners and Psychic Fangs and Sacred Swords are going to be hitting that much more harder, and paired up with like Adamant Choice Band due to its absolutely massive speed stat of 135 is going to be hitting super hard, and the combination of Chien-Pao Mewtwo can make what is pretty much an unwallable offensive core. And to complement the offensive core, I grabbed Terra Regieleki. Terra Regieleki was 26 points, so it's basically a third Uber Pokemon, which is pretty nice to have. It has 100 in both attack stats, and its ability is Transistor, which boosts the power of electric type moves this Pokemon uses, and its moveset is really nothing special. But the addition of Terra Blast makes this a really valuable Terra Captain. So Regieleki is a super fast Pokemon, and like it has a 200 base speed stat, making it the fastest thing in the game. So yeah, it's going to be firing off moves fast, and where it has the Transistor ability with Thunderbolt and the possible option to run Choice Specs, its Thunderbolts and just general electric type moves are going to be hitting so hard that you need a ground type to kind of switch in and beat it. Unfortunately, due to Regieleki being a Terra Captain that can Terra into any type in any matchup, the advent of Terra Blast Ice or Terra Blast Water or Terra Blast Grass kind of screws that whole plan up, making Regieleki unwallable on paper. And just pairing it up with like the offense that I have is pretty good. Like, I'm going to be pressuring a lot of teams to like honestly not even try to beat me defensively, but like try to just like outpace me. And whenever you have Pokemon that have a 200 base speed stat, it's kind of hard to outpace. But yeah, Mewtwo, Chien-Pao, and Regieleki force my opponents into reads that they may not want to make. And that's generally the theme of what I want my offense to do. I want them to make reads they don't want to make, and just generally try and just slap them as hard as possible. So yeah, I don't know that I'm doing this team justice. I quite literally just drafted it, and yeah, I'm getting free entertainment from my cats out there, so yeah. But Regieleki can pivot out with Volt Switch or Explosion if it wants to. It can set up Light Screen and Reflect to help the defensive capabilities of Mewtwo Chien-Pao. It can set Thunder Wave to slow things down like Choice Scarfers that will inevitably be brought. And it can Rapid Spin to remove hazards for Chien-Pao to come in for like easier. So yeah. Next up, and this is where the draft kind of gets a bit scattered for me, because I drafted an initial team of like 11 Pokemon and I dropped like 8 of those ones for 7. So this is going into territory that was not drafted but picked up by me after the draft. So I think my initial, like, third pick was Corviknight, and yeah. The third pick was Corviknight, but I dropped it, and so Regieleki is taking the place of the third pick. So, yeah. We have Garchomp next, which has Earthquake, Stealth Rock, Spikes, giving me that valuable entry hazard setter. Sorry, I'm just checking around. Giving me that valuable entry hazard setter with like the Stealth Rock and Spikes, getting Chip on Pokemon to secure 2-hit KOs or OHKOs from Mewtwo, Chien-Pao, or Regieleki. And Garchomp is not a slouch on offense either. It has a nice 130 base attack stat, solid 102 speed stat, and a solid 80 special attack stat that can be used to fire off Draco Meteors into stuff like Great Tusk. It has Dragon Tail to phase setup sweepers out if I need it, and it has Rough Skin to secure passive chip on physical attackers that make contact with it. And yeah, Garchomp's just generally a nice Pokemon. I'm very, very surprised that it was left after the draft, and I had to pounce on it. I really had to pounce on it because just getting good hazard support with this offense is just way too important for this team. And yeah, Garchomp gives me that hazard option and gives me some solid offense to go along with this. Like, it can be tanky, but it's not passive, which is very, very important in UBERS whenever things can run like sub and just set up on you to no end. So next up we have Klefki. I needed to get a steel type and a fairy type that was solid, and I also needed to kind of bolster my hazard game and also get some nice T-Wave support going that isn't named Regieleki. So Klefki kind of checked all these boxes off, and it gets widescreen reflect so Regieleki won't have to run that some weeks, which bolster my offensive capabilities with Garchomp, Chien-Pao, and Mewtwo. And it also gives a bit of added bulk to Regieleki because Regieleki is not that bulky. It gets Foul Play to kind of punish some attackers that want to set up physically. It gets Thunder Wave to paralyze things. A Switcheroo with like Choice Scarf, even though Switcheroo doesn't really make a lot of sense on a Prankster Pokemon. It could like Switcheroo like a Choice Specs or a Choice Scarf onto a setup sweeper, even though like you may as well just like quick Thunder Wave. And Klefki can even run Iron Defense and Calm Mind to just generally be a troll with setup. And this Iron Defense Calm Mind niche is exactly why I decided to make Klefki my second Terra Captain. I initially wanted it to be something else on the draft, which you will see that in a couple of picks, but the points didn't allow it, and I didn't really want to rework the draft too much, because in UBERS you can't afford to be passive at all. And you'll see my justification later on in the video. So Klefki, very, very mediocre stats, but it's a very, very solid Pokemon with Spike support and then like Thunder Wave and Widescreen and Reflect. Its support is unmatched, and with Prankster it's going to be getting priority on those moves. So it can get up a Widescreen on like a fearsome special attacker, and then it can get up a Reflect after it lives the hit, and then I have free reign to go into like Chien-Pao, Mewtwo, or Garchomp, or hell, even Regieleki, to kind of set up or just try and punch a hole in my opponent's team. It gets Draining Kiss for recovery to use with like Calm Mindsets, and it gets like Dazzling Gleam, Flash Cannon, Play Rough, stuff like that to hit things hard, and it also gets Magnet Rise to get a ground immunity from the steel typing. So yeah, Klefki, it has a lot of tricks it can do, which is fitting for a Prankster Pokemon. Next up we have Sneasler. Sneasler gives me the fighting type that I want to pair up with Mewtwo, completing my general offensive core and completing my speed. So 120 base speed stat gives me something to bridge the gap between Chien-Pao and Garchomp. Actually, no, Mewtwo and Garchomp. And it has a 130 base attack stat, being able to break things open with like Quest Combats, Dire Claws, Throat Chops, Fire Punches, or U-turns if needed. It gets Toxic Spikes to set up hazards if the matchup calls for it, and Switcheroo to, you know, I've mentioned this a lot now, trick a Choice Scarf or a Choice Band or some form of choice item onto a setup sweeper just to inhibit their effectiveness. Thank you, McAfee Antivirus. Oh man, that threw my rhythm off. But Sneasler, I've always really wanted to use it. It has two great abilities with Unburden and Poison Touch. Poison Touch gives a chance to poison after any contact move, and Unburden, it doubles its speed stat after an item is used, like a White Herb or a Grassy Seed. I could use White Herb with Quest Combat to just get my stats back and get a speed buff to go alongside it. And yeah, an important thing to note that it doesn't really work with knockoff. So if an opponent knocks off an item, then I don't get that Unburden boost anymore. And that'll be something to watch out for with Sneasler. Fortunately, I have some okay knockoff absorbers with Klefki, and, well, Chien-Pao doesn't really appreciate it, but Klefki can take knockoffs pretty well, and yeah. This is generally my dark type answer that Mewtwo struggles. Mewtwo struggles to deal with dark types. Sneasler takes care of the dark types, and also Sneasler can pivot around, which is an important thing for my offense. So Sneasler can pivot around. If it gets matched up with the Psychic type, it can pivot out and go into Chien-Pao. And yeah, my offense works really, really well together, and one of my friends said, yeah, Mewtwo, Chien-Pao, Sneasler, Regieleki just sounds absolutely agonizing to deal with and switch into. So I took his word for it, and we got Sneasler. So, next things next, we have the Pokemon that I wanted to be a Terra Captain, Moltres. So Moltres generally doesn't have a bad stat. It wants to be a more Phys-Def Pokemon with the 90 HP and 90 defense, but it doesn't have a bad stat. It can use that 100 base attack stat to U-turn out, and it can use all those defensive stats to fire off Roost, Roars, and Will-O-Wisp. And generally Moltres' job on this team is to cripple physical attackers with Flame Body and Will-O-Wisp to burn those Pokemon, have the power of their physical moves, and generally just make them useless. Moltres gets nice moves like Air Slash, Flamethrower, and Scorching Sands. Man. But it gets good moves like that. U-turn to pivot around, which is super, super important for my team. Having a slower defensive pivot for this team is very, very important for me. And it gets Roar to phase things out like Garchomp gets Dragon Tail. So Moltres generally has it all. It's a very, very nice defensive piece that I love using a lot. I wish I could have made it a Terra Captain, but the points didn't allow it, and just generally the format didn't really allow me to. And I'll explain why with my next pick. My next pick is really the thing that kind of messed everything up with the Klefki Moltres Terra Captain situation, and it was Vaporeon. So in this league they had 3 bulky waters that I wanted to draft. First was Milotic, which was 12 points. Then there was Vaporeon, which was 10 points, and then there was a Alomomola, which was 9 points. Milotic was too expensive, and it was up to Vaporeon and Alomomola. I ultimately went Vaporeon because Awomomoa was just way too passive for what I wanted to do. And Vaporeon just is a lot less passive with that 110 base special attack stat, and it has access to Haze to punish. It has access to Haze and Alluring Voice to punish setup sweepers with confusion or just generally removal of their stats. It gets Scald to try and punish physical attackers switching in. It has Flip Turn to pivot around, so it acts as a slow pivot to get in things like Mewtwo, Regieleki, Chin-Pao, Garchomp, Sneasler, just everything. If they pivot into a grass type, I can just quick Flip Turn, go into Chin-Pao, and just try and force them to make a read they don't want to make, or go Regieleki on a water type. There's just a lot of options that I have using a slow pivot with this just fearsome offense. And I can do the same thing pretty much with Moltres. So the big reason that I wanted to go Vaporeon over Alomomola is that 110 special attack stat with Scald. Generally, Vaporeon can break the substitutes that Alomomola could not. It has the moveset to do so, with Scald, Ice Beam, Alluring Voice, and hell, even Shadow Ball. Or if that's not enough, it could run Surf. But yeah, Vaporeon can generally break the subs that Alomomola struggled to. Alomomola does not have great attacking stats. And yeah, that is something that I really wanted to address with this bulky water pick. If I went Alomomola, I could have made Moltres a Terra Captain over Klefki, which logically it could have made more sense, but I went with a more practical option of Vaporeon because I felt it was better. And Vaporeon also gives me a special attacking sponge with a 130 base HP stat and a 95 base special defense stat, much like Moltres gives me something to handle physical moves. And then we have dual screens from Klefki and Regieleki to kind of supplement that. And another note, Moltres, Vaporeon, Garchomp make a really nice defensive backbone that's honestly kind of underrated. And a final note, Vaporeon gets one of my favorite moves in the game, Wish, being able to keep my attackers healthy without needing to rely on like rest or recover. So yeah, that is pretty much the bulk of my team, as my cat has jumped up on my car again. So that is pretty much the main core of my team. These are the main 8. The last 2 are Avila, Hisui, and Arboliva, I'm not sure. I think it's Arboliva. But for Avila Hisui, we made it our 3rd and final Terra Captain. Surprisingly, only a 1-point Terra attacks for something that becomes so much better with Terra. So Avila Hisui gets Stealth Rock, Rapid Spin, Recover, Earthquake, Body Press, Iron Defense, Ice Spinner. It also gets Curse to buff its attack and defense stats if it wants to, at the cost of its speed stat, which it didn't really have much of a speed stat to begin with. So we have Stealth Rock to kind of bolster our hazard game and give us another Stealth Rock user that isn't Garchomp. We have Rapid Spin to remove hazard, so Regieleki isn't the only hazard remover on this team. Recover allows me to recover its health. And generally with Terra, this thing becomes a very annoying physical wall to deal with. So yeah, but generally in UBERS, most things are special attackers, so Vaporeon was a bit more important to get as a special sponge, but Avalugg and Moltres as physical walls are really appreciated on this team, and also its ability in Sturdy makes it so it can't be one-shot by anything, being able to get guaranteed rocks up or a guaranteed spin-off if the situation calls for it. Body Press is super useful off of its base 184 defense stat, and yeah, that is generally Avalugg Hisui in a nutshell. I've used Avalugg in the past in DDD for like a week, it did pretty solid. It has surprisingly good attack that not many people will consider, especially if it's like a meme week or something. But Avalokitsuhi is a super solid pick, and I'm surprised how cheap it was to be able to Terra, considering it becomes really good with Terra. And finally, we have our Balava. Our Balava is pretty much a type chart filler. I desperately needed a normal type because my ghost switch in is a Chin Pao, and that's not good, Chief. That ain't good. So our Balava's here just to kind of help that out. It's a nice bulky Pokemon with base 78 HP, 90 defense, and 109 def. Its speed stat ain't anything special, but it has a solid base special attack stat and really good moves like Hyper Voice, Leech Seed, Encore, Strength Sap, and Alluring Voice. Gets Memento to kind of generate momentum and try and get an opportunity for like Mewtwo, Chin-Pao, Garchomp, or Sneasler to come in and set up. And it gets Synthesis to heal and Earth Power for those Steel types. And Arboliva is just generally a solid Pokemon, and something else I kind of noticed, like, after the draft, Arboliva has the ability Seed Sower, which summons Grassy Terrain whenever it is hit by any move, like any damage-dealing move. So, I could switch it in, activate Seed Sower, and then go into Sneasler to get Grassy Seed Unburden sweeps, which I think is absolutely hilarious. And yeah, this is pretty much Rillaboom at home. Well, not really, because it can't do anything that Rillaboom does. Thwackey is more Rillaboom at home, but Arboliva, it can set up Grassy Terrain okay, and that's just about all I need for this team to succeed. But at any rate, this is this haphazard amalgamation of a draft analysis for the Uber Pokemon Association. I hope you all enjoyed this journey through many cat distractions and just other various distractions and me not knowing how to phrase things in a video. But at any rate, I will see you all in about a week. Oh no, not about a week, exactly a week, for our week 1 battle. I am not going to be revealing who we're playing until we play them. So, at any rate, I will catch you all in the next video. Peace.